we're back for part 2.
We are? You didn't tell me we were shooting this today. Should I go get dressed so I can intro the video?
No, that's all right. I got it covered.
You didn't forget to write me as a character, right? I mean, usually you write an entire mini character arc that matches the themes of the essay, and I'm assuming I'm going to have a personal monologue later.
Yes, of course, I totally remembered you. You're really important to the story, and definitely not a thing I use to smooth over edits.
So I should go get changed then?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
For Joseph Campbell, myths are not just stories from the past, but a template for how to live your life.
How to live a human lifetime under any circumstances. Myth can tell you that.
The great men of myths are not just characters in a drama, but kings who deserve our obedience and reverence. He looks to the past to retroactively justify the power structures that he himself benefits from. Christianity, patriarchy, capitalism.
Yeah, and they are magnificent.
Despite knowing that these very structures eradicated any alternative ideas of heroism or how to organize society. It's just a book, I can hear you typing in the comments. And dear reader, I wish it were just a book. But Campbell preached his own interpretation of history and literature like a self-help guru.
Follow your bliss.
Promising a better, happier life if you apply his hero's cycle to your own.
But if you think, oh, gee, I couldn't do that, that's your dragon that's locking you in.
But because Campbell lacks any analysis of structural power.
I don't think it would help you to change the system, but it would help you to live in the system as a human being.
He can't see how the hero cycle, which romanticizes the actions of the individual,
This accent, as I've been saying, on the individual.
may not pan out for the systematically oppressed. Or how the people whose cultures that he spoke for might view his authority as the dragon. Anyway, here's the time he defended Nazis. In the Power of Myth series, Joseph Campbell repeatedly talks about war with heroic terms. Everything from the draft.
Being drafted into the army. You didn't intend it, you're in another transformation. You've undergone a death and resurrection. You put on a uniform. You're another creature.
To courageous acts of soldiers from the clips that he saw on TV.
I remember during the Vietnam War seeing on the television the young men in helicopters going out to rescue one of their companions at great risk to themselves. It puts them in touch with the experience of being alive.
So if you could see heroism in the Vietnam War, a conflict that would come to be seen as senseless and tragic, you might think that he would at least be just as enthusiastic about World War II. After all, it was a conflict that reshaped American mythology, called countless people around the world to action, and even gave us the textbook baddies, the Nazis.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
All right, let's set the stage. It's 1941. Pearl Harbor has been attacked, and America can no longer remain neutral about the war. Campbell writes a lecture called Permanent Human Values to give his thoughts on this call to action and the atrocities abroad. Except he didn't see this as a call to action and downplayed the Nazi threat by minimizing their atrocities. He warned his students against getting involved. In 1989, Brendan Gill wrote a retrospective that criticized Campbell's response. Gill writes,
In December 1941, 3 days after Pearl Harbor, Campbell gave a lecture at Sarah Lawrence on the subject Permanent Human Values, urging the assembled undergraduates not to be caught up in war hysteria and not to be tricked into missing the education to which they were entitled simply because a Mr. Hitler collides with a Mr. Churchill.
What a weird way to describe World War II. In his lecture, interestingly, Campbell didn't see this war as a heroic call to action. Instead, he argued that our main concern should not be defeating the Nazis or stopping fascism, but rather our goal should be safeguarding the knowledge, history, and scholarship of German culture. Let me say, therefore, that any serious student of history or science who permits the passions of this hour to turn her away from German is a fool. Which, on its face, I don't have a problem with. Except then I would expect that he'd be extremely angry with Hitler for banning and burning books from his extremely important German culture, right? Wrong. In the very same lecture, where he says that preserving German culture is more important than defeating Nazis, he also dismisses concerns about Nazis destroying German culture, saying that anyone who criticizes the censorship is merely
snorting through one nostril about the book burnings in Germany.
Now, many of you probably know that Germany didn't just burn any old random books. They selected the books that they considered subversive and threatening to their power. One of their very first targets was the raid on the library at the Berlin Institute of Sexual Sciences in May 1933. The institute was a world leader in research on human sexuality and a vocal proponent of the global decriminalization of homosexuality. Founded by Magnus Hirschfeld, who himself was a gay Jewish man. The Nazis stole and burned over 20,000 books, all of which were irreplaceable research on the queer, gay, and transgender experience, as well as years of medical records that painstakingly recorded safe healthcare practices for LGBT+ patients. I'm not the first to point out what a significant loss to science and humanity this was. Had the Nazis not targeted the Institute in an effort to synchronize culture to their ideology, who knows what kind of strides we would have made towards queer liberation. If these writings had survived, that would mean that we'd have a century of continuous research and support for LGBT+ people, improving the lives of billions of people around the world. But sure, yeah, I guess everyone who showed concern were all just snorting through one nostril. Throughout the rest of his lecture, Campbell argues that Americans should not judge Nazis that harshly because America was brutal in the past too, that art cannot be political, and accused anyone who wanted to stop Hitler of being egotistical because they were putting their desire ahead of permanent human values. Oh, and also he never says what those are. But listen, I'm not actually here to retroactively humiliate Joseph Campbell about his Nazi sympathies, because he did that all himself while he was alive. In a show of audacity that shocked even me, Campbell sent a copy of his lecture on permanent human values to the writer Thomas Mann. Mann was one of Campbell's literary heroes, next to only James Joyce. Campbell sent this speech, in which he minimizes the danger of Nazis and book burnings, to a German novelist whose books were literally burned by Nazis. Mann also struggled with his own sexuality in his life and writings, and he was eventually exiled from Germany for fear of being executed. And this is kind of a microcosm of what Joseph Campbell does. Here is someone with first-hand experience, one of Campbell's self-proclaimed heroes, who Joseph Campbell easily could have looked to as an authority on the effects of Nazi oppression. After reading the lecture, Mann wrote back to Campbell,
"It is strange you are a friend of my books, which therefore, according to your opinion, must have something to do with permanent human values. Now these books are forbidden in Germany and in all countries that Germany rules, and whoever reads them, or even should sell them, and whoever would so much as praise my name publicly, would be put into a concentration camp, and his teeth would be bashed in, and his kidneys split in two. You teach that we must not get upset about that. We must rather take care of the maintenance of permanent human values. Once again, this is strange."
In the defining conflict of the 20th century, the conflict that rewrote American mythology, Campbell was completely blindsided. He told his own students to reject the call to action as the war broke out. Then he rejects advice from one of his heroes, his Obi-Wan Kenobi. According to Campbell's own ideas, these events should have spurred deep introspection and spiritual growth, but it didn't. And even years later, when asked about Thomas Mann, Campbell claimed that the writer had lost altitude as an artist by descending into political activity and raising his voice against the Nazis. Oh my God. Just as Campbell felt comfortable lecturing other cultures about their own myths, he felt comfortable lecturing Thomas Mann about his own oppression under the Nazis. But hey, it's like the saying goes, one man's bliss is another man's letter to a queer writer who's being hunted by fascists. One of the things that may have rubbed Thomas Mann the wrong way in Campbell's Permanent Human Values lecture is Campbell's insistence that the role of the artist is to be apolitical. Campbell argues that the artist must be an absolute moral vacuum, with no concern for their fellow humans, the state of the world, or anything, really, aside from studying that which has come before them.
The artist, insofar as he is an artist, looks at the world dispassionately, without thought of defending his ego or his friends, without thought of undoing any enemy, troubled neither with desire or loathing. You must not allow yourself to be tricked into believing that social criticism is proper art.
What do you even say to that? That is just so blatantly wrong. How do you even address that? Speaking personally, my favorite works of art are social criticism, from the explicitly political all the way to more personal and emotional pieces. While Campbell was giving this lecture, segregation based on skin color was still legal, and the women he was lecturing to in 1941 would have been born just a year or two after gaining the right to vote. The Aeneid, a Roman epic poem which Campbell references as a heroic myth, was written explicitly as both social criticism and political propaganda. The first American novel, Wildland, was explicit social criticism. Dr. Strangelove helped turn American opinion against nuclear deterrence. Get Out, Us, Sesame Street. Hell, the Bible is political. To this day, people's entire beings are labeled political, regardless of their thoughts or feelings.
Hey, just letting you know that I've been ready for a while now. So just let me know when you need me.
Oh, sure.
Because I got a lot of things to say on the topic. And you told me I was really...
Not now. Campbell had the privilege of viewing himself as apolitical and objective, when, in reality, he, like many people in power, bends the world around themselves until it matches their personal biases. And then on the other hand, everything that women, people of color, and other marginalized identities say is considered to be our personal biases, marred by our emotional, unobjective, infantilized point of view, instead of seeing us as people who might have insight into our own oppression. For a man who considers himself anti-authority, Campbell sure seems to view the great men of the past as essential authority figures. Like a circle. They are right because they are authority figures, and they are authority figures because they're right. If only there was a name for this type of logic. While discussing the nature of creating art in The Power of Myth, Campbell says,
The myth makers in earlier days were the counterparts of our artists. There's an old romantic idea in German, das Volkdicht, that say that the poetry of the traditional cultures and the ideas come out of the folk. They do not. They come out of an elite experience, the experience of people particularly gifted, whose ears are open to the song of the universe.
Das Volkdichtet is the Grimm brothers' idea of communal creation and folklore. So here's Campbell, who argues that there's nothing more important than preserving German culture, smacking down the idea from two people whose entire life's work was to preserve German culture. And he doesn't even give a reason for why their work is wrong. And that's two white guys he's disagreeing with. The rest of us don't even have a chance. But I do think I have an inkling that the reason he views elites as inherently particularly gifted is because of his uncritical acceptance of Thomas Carlyle's great man theory. If it seemed weird that Campbell described World War II as a Mr. Hitler collides with a Mr. Churchill, that's because it's weird. But it's also a textbook example of Carlyle's theory, laid out in a series of lectures from the 19th century. You probably recognize this phrase from it.
The history of the world is but the biography of great men.
And to Carlyle, that is a good thing, and not a cautionary tale about who has written history. Great man logic is, once again, cyclical. Kings are great men because they are kings, and great men are kings because they're great. And it's everyone else's job to obey.
There is no act more moral between men than that of rule and obedience. Woe to him that claims obedience when it is not due. Woe to him that refuses it when it is.
And to Carlyle, the only person who deserved this obedience is your king. Carlyle gave his great man lectures as a response to the American Revolution and the failure of the French Revolution. His theory was retaliation against the progressive ideas gaining traction at the time: the Enlightenment, the scientific method, democratization, and the separation of church and state. Both Carlyle and Campbell ignore that their great men, or hero kings, must constantly reinforce their own power through violence, occupation, and active repression. That includes things like burning books, executing dissenters, and rewriting history to justify the righteousness of their own power. Throughout his career, and especially in The Power of Myth, Campbell talks authoritatively about stories, in a way that you'd think he's read every book ever written and heard every story ever told. But this ignores that the vast majority of stories throughout human history have been lost. 90% of medieval heroic manuscripts have been lost. Only 7% of English medieval literature still exists. And that's just from one time period and continent. Never mind the mass eradication of Mayan and Aztec libraries by Europeans. And those examples are all written language. How do you even calculate the loss of oral traditions, like those of indigenous American peoples? The sheer amount of stories that we have lost far outstrips the ones that remain. But even as someone who should be aware of the patchy nature of the literary record, Campbell still feels comfortable claiming that his hero's story is universal. He is committing the logical error of survivorship bias, or concentrating on people or things that made it past some selection process and overlooking those that did not. For the stories that have survived the centuries, many of them were explicitly spared because they served the powers that be, or at the very least, didn't overtly challenge them. Once upon a time, if you wanted your book to get published and not get thrown on a pyre, you'd put Christian themes in it. And the books that didn't got thrown on the pyre. And then centuries later, Joseph Campbell looks at a library full of books that were spared by the church and goes, "Wow, what a coincidence that all these books are about Jesus. He must be real." In folklore tradition, it's the people who tell stories, communally creating meaning as a society. But in a society led by a great man, he is the one who says which stories are valid and, more importantly, what they're supposed to mean. Joseph Campbell, the believer in the great man theory, the maverick,
I see myself as a maverick.
sets himself up to be the ultimate great man storyteller, deciphering his ultimate great story, his monomyth. As Professor Brian Atterbury notes,
Campbell's monomyth provides the justification for assimilating yet another culture's sacred traditions. If all the world's mythic beings are merely, as Campbell said in another title, masks of God, then anyone can try on whichever mask suits the occasion.
But believing in the monomyth does do one very important thing for society. It allows a certain demographic to feel better about the cultures and stories that have been destroyed. After all, if all myths are the same, then it's not a big deal when you lose one, or a few thousand, or kill off a society's oral storytellers. What remains are largely the myths of the conquerors, coming out of an elite experience, who believe they are particularly gifted and tell themselves that their ears are open.
If every myth is the monomyth, then everybody can have the home version of a myth quest with no personal danger and no obligation to follow the rules of the society whose myths one has bought. And that is what much formula fantasy becomes. A quick and safe trip into myth with no risk and no transformation.
There are completely valid reasons for why the hero cycle resonates with people, and I don't want to discount that. One of them being that in a hero cycle story, any pain or suffering that the hero endures is ultimately purposeful. It brings him closer to the end of the journey. These kinds of myths promise us that the ends will justify the means, that wading through our roadblocks will ultimately bring us the glory, the girl, or the gold that we're entitled to for slaying the dragon. But this universal idea that suffering leads to enlightenment can be traumatic for, say, victims in real life. How many times have you heard someone gloss over someone else's pain by saying, "I'm so sorry that terrible thing happened to you, but I'm sure it made you a stronger person," which has been completely disproven by science and Harley Quinn.
You know, psychologically speaking, vengeance rarely brings the catharsis we hope for. Yeah.
but leads to things like telling an 8-year-old they need to carry their abuser's baby to term because the life-ruining trauma will be worth it when she completes the heroic, selfless act of giving birth. Or imagine the young person who signs up for the military, expecting a heroic journey, only to be killed in a faraway land away from his family.
The dead know only one thing. It is better to be alive.
But that's what happens to many people when they answer the call. The hero's journey feels even more inadequate now that we're in the throes of late capitalism. There's only room for a few great men at the top, and those below are just seen as not working hard enough, not following their bliss hard enough.
Follow your bliss.
To reach the end of their own hero's cycle. And when the hard work doesn't lead to someone receiving the reward that they were promised by our myths, they blame themselves, blame entire other groups of people, or even turn to violence. It's something that America has been grappling with since its inception. I mean, what's the American dream but an empty promise of this exact same thing? Come here, leave your home, work hard as an immigrant, and eventually you will reap the rewards of this fine and fair country. The weird thing is, Joseph Campbell admits that his philosophy won't change things, and especially won't make the world a better place. In the Power of Myth TV series, he said,
When people say to me, do you have optimism about the world, how terrible it is? I said, yes, just say it's great. Just the way it is.
And in his companion book, he continued,
And you are not going to fix it up. Nobody has ever made it any better. It is never going to be any better. This is it. So take it or leave it. You are not going to correct or improve it.
If anything, one of my major problems with Campbell is how nihilistic he is. His idea of heroism is confined to self-help platitudes, and he doesn't seem to believe at all in the power of collective action. He reads all of these beautiful writings, poems, religious texts that mean so much to so many people. And all he's really concerned about is, okay, but how does this serve me? Some of the best prestige drama shows from the golden age of television interrogate our relationship to the hero's tale, and more specifically, men's relationship to the hero's tale. For Tony Soprano, the hero's cycle is basically inverted. Each individual episode may follow the hero's cycle, but instead of leading to growth and enlightenment, following Tony's bliss leads to alienating or murdering all of his friends, and leaves him with nothing but this sense of emptiness.
Is this all there is?
That's how two people can watch Breaking Bad and come away with two completely different stories. The hero's journey of Heisenberg, or the slow breakdown of a man who maybe once cared about his family at some point. Even in Mad Men, we see Don Draper sell CEOs the hero's journey and enlightenment under the guise of their cool new product, while Draper's own life lacks the comfort and fulfillment that was supposed to be his reward for success.
What you call love was invented by guys like me.
But I want to jump back to where we started this off. Joseph Campbell and Star Wars. George Lucas famously wrote Star Wars as a monomythic tale. He and Campbell were credited for updating the hero archetype from the childish Flash Gordon serials to the modern blockbuster. According to Campbell, the Star Wars movies should be a worldwide phenomenon, since they're the gold standard of his universal story structure. Except they aren't. Most notably, Star Wars never caught on in China. According to Donnie Yen, who was in Rogue One, Chinese audiences didn't grow up with Star Wars culture, so unfortunately it didn't work. I don't think enough Western filmmakers have spent the time to really analyze the Asian market. That's why you'll notice a lot of American films don't work over here. Their audiences have entirely different expectations for their story structures, and it looks nothing like Campbell's hero's journey. A friend of mine, who produces movies for the Chinese and broader East Asian markets, once put it to me like this. American films are about a character who drives the action forward. Chinese films are about a character reacting to the events happening to them. Listen, I'm not qualified to unpack that, and there's a lot more written on this. We'll include a bibliography below, but the basic idea remains. Story structure and the values within those stories vary from culture to culture. And while, yes, we are all human and have things in common, I think we have much more to gain from trying to understand what makes each story unique, rather than trying to retroactively shove every story into one mold. Especially when we've decided in advance that every hero is a metaphor for Jesus Christ. My God.
The Buddha figure is like that of the Christ. A young Iroquois boy, he was being brought to be tortured to death. And that boy was Jesus. The Pharaoh sits on the throne of Isis. As the child sits on the mother lap, you will see the Madonna as the throne with the little child Jesus as the world emperor on her lap. That is the same image.
Okay, that's it. I've had it. I'm cutting in. I've been silent long enough. I'm taking off these wings because they're itchy. Hold on one sec. Hold on one sec. Hold on one sec. Ow. Ow. Hold on one sec. Hold on one sec. That's it. That's it. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. One sec. Okay. Ah! Okay. I have something to say. When I was young, one of the first stories that pulled my heart out of my chest and made me fall in love with movies was, of course, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. A kid who was awkward and bullied, receiving power that he'd never felt in real life, facing obstacles, and arising a spider person with a purpose. And Mary Jane was dope too. And dashboard abs. I really believed that when I came across difficult parts in my life, like being bullied, it was okay because it would all pay off in the end when I'm older. That it would make me a better person. I was diagnosed with depression when I was only 16, and I thought, well, yeah, this sucks, but this pain is gonna make me a more introspective person. In short, I believed in the hero's journey. I did leave home, I did change my entire worldview, but that pain did not help at all. And my transformation never looked like this. And it wasn't even until my adulthood that my life started to take the route of the heroine's journey, in which someone completes the hero's journey, realizes that the prize at the end is hollow and laden with caveats, so they set out again to rediscover what actually makes them fulfilled and happy. Oh, the heroine's journey? What's that? Oh, you know, just one of the many alternatives to the hero's journey. This one happens to be written by that very woman from the first video, Maureen Murdoch, the student who told Joseph Campbell, "I want to be the hero," which frustrated him to the point that he said he was glad he was retiring. It might sound familiar because the popular franchise Hunger Games actually follows this heroine's journey. The first film is Katniss completing the hero's journey, only to find herself a part of that same oppressive apparatus and must find another way through revolution. Another of my favorite alternatives is Ursula Le Guin's beautifully written essay, Carrier Bag Theory, in which stories are crafted like the actual first tools of humans. A sack to carry things around. I'll include an entire list of books, articles, and other story structures below, and guess what? They were so easy to find! If you love literary criticism so much, how have you never Googled alternatives? Or criticisms of the work, or read works by women about the hero's journey? Because Campbell sure had a lot to say about them. Aren't you curious? I purposefully started with Campbell's misogyny in this video series because I did a simple search for the word woman in one of his books, and wow!
The problem is that in this woman's movement, they started out in a perfectly legitimate way. A woman doing the same job as a man ought to get equivalent pay. That's the way it started. But now it comes that women are losing the appreciation for their own domestic life, their own domestic potentialities, to bring up children and so forth. They are turning it all over to the state and the schools.
This cartoonish 1950s misogyny is just right there in black and white. I mean, listen to this.
I think it's a shame what's happening with the co-ed movement. This differentiation, which is so important to human life, the difference between a male and a female is being wiped out. All differentiations are being wiped out. You're almost not allowed to even have a club now. Anything like a differentiation is called elitism, and it's not enjoyed.
The man is literally Ben Shapiro WAP meltdowning about men and women just working alongside each other. But if you bring up that this might be a blind spot for Campbell, you'll simultaneously get dudes saying,
"You're lying, he never said any of that stuff."
But also,
"It's okay he said that stuff because it was a different time."
So which is it? And while, yes, I agree that people from other time periods don't have the benefit of hindsight. But as we know, he was confronted with his views by Maureen Murdoch, by Thomas Mann. The dude just doesn't listen.
Campbell's claim that all myths are universal implies that he has listened to all myths. But he doesn't even listen to other people. He doesn't even listen to his own hero!
Which should make you wonder, did he even really listen to the myths that he was writing about? If you don't have experience navigating the world as a feminine creature, here's how I used to describe it for my guy friends. And just a heads up, this is a very binary example, but I trust you understand the point. Men get to be movies. People watch them with rapt attention. They always assume that something is going on. Their depth and gravitas are a given. When you're a woman, people project things onto you like you're a blank screen. Your purpose in life is to be projected on. Instead of people being curious about your story, they blast their ideas onto you. And their ideas about you, no matter how incorrect or infantilizing, are considered far more important than you could ever be. You can see men writing their myth about you in their heads while you're talking. Part of my experience in academia was just reading about men who would find me repulsive. But on top of that, don't worry, because they've also dedicated all of their free time to writing in great detail just how repulsive and alien they find you. And not just you, but all the things that you genuinely love about yourself. And the things that you're learning that you love about other women and other people. And then you find out that other people feel the same, but they feel the need to hide it because it's bad. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And those cuts only get worse when you get older, as the men are no longer your classmates, but people who hold real power, who cannot wait to make you their prize at the end of their hero's journey. Sure, Joseph Campbell did live in the past, but we don't. And yet these exact same bigoted ideas are found everywhere you look today. And the pain of misogyny and all of his other weird hang-ups are here with us in the present. So, yeah, the hero's journey is bullshit. The monomyth is full of logical fallacies, and the reason you believe it is because a proto-Jordan Peterson told you to. And he's a great man, so he must be right. And he's right because he is a great man. Do I think Joseph Campbell was a horrible person? No. I just think he was a person. And way too many have uncritically seen him as much, much more than that. The amount of people I have seen call Joseph Campbell their guru. Do I want you to pull his books off of your shelves? No. I don't want you to burn his books. But I do want you to start filling your shelves with books from the people and places that Campbell took his ideas from. And read some essays from some women. And Neil Gaiman. They're out there. Trust me. You just have to step outside of your comfort zone. Go beyond your doorstep. And be willing to have your point of view challenged by people that are not telling you exactly what you want to hear. I feel like some of you may just now be embarking on your own hero wins. journey. So, go buy some sports bras. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. Okay, fade in. Picture this. You've written an amazing screenplay that totally defies the hero's journey and sets a new paradigm for storytelling. Great. That was easy. Now, you just gotta make it.
Lucky for you, Patrick Willems has an entire Nebula class on how to make a movie, where he covers everything from big picture ideas like filmmaking is just problem solving, to the nuances of working with actors, to the nitty gritty of pickups and reshoots. And hey, he should know, since he honed his feature filmmaking skills while making his film, Night of the Coconut. Nebula Classes is the newest cool idea from Nebula, the creator-owned streaming service.
Whether you're totally new to filmmaking or you just want to brush up on a few skills, Patrick's class is essential.
He uses concrete, real-world examples from his productions. His lessons are both accessible and encouraging, but most importantly, Patrick thinks like a filmmaker, always finding creative solutions to unexpected problems.
If you want to make movies or YouTube videos or any other kind of audio-visual barrage, these skills are invaluable.
And Patrick's class isn't the only one you'll get access to when you sign up. There's already dozens of great classes that will help you find your feet as an independent creator, like high-spec content on a low-spec budget from Alex the Low-Spec Gamer, Business 101 for Creators from Thomas Frank, Persuasive Communication by Sam from Wendover. Do you keep thinking to yourself, I'll never be a filmmaker, I'm not good enough to be a filmmaker? Well, Georgia Dow has a great class on beating anxiety, and there's new classes dropping every week. If you sign up with my link below, you'll get Nebula classes for less than $10 a month. Just head over to nebulaclasses.com/Maggie Mae Fish. And if you're already subscribed to the Curiosity Stream bundle, you can upgrade for even less. Your class's subscription includes all the content that you'd find on Nebula too, with over 14,000 videos from 150 creators ad-free, including Nebula originals that you can't get anywhere else.
I'm sure you are for the common man, and signing up for Nebula classes is a great way to support independent creators, and using my link below is a great way to support the channel. So, if you want to learn from the best creators on the internet, it's my very biased opinion, use my link and sign up today.
Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, congratulations! You've reached the end of your own hero's journey. Please fill out the appropriate form, also known as the comment section below, with why you believe you deserve your reward for being a hero. You should receive your spiritual enlightenment in the mail within 90 days. Sorry, no refunds. If you liked the video, be sure to like the video. Check that you're subscribed to the channel, and click the bell to get notified when my next video comes out. And a very special thank you to all my lovely patrons who help make these videos possible. And hey, you too can be one of the countless chosen ones. Just head over to patreon.com/Maggie Mae Fish for early access to videos and your name along with all these fine folks. Be sure to check out my series of videos on Twin Peaks, where I talk more about the golden age of TV as a commentary on heroism. Until next time, sit back, relax, do some dishes. Martha's out being a hero right now, but she'll be back by 6. And dinner better be on the table.